You mean it doesn't sound like the Rifleman, huh? Pachoo! Pachoo!
I love this photo because it's like a sense of glee. He's like genuinely, really happy to hold that thing.
I don't know if that's glee or he just said, I will pick you up.
And he just got up and ran over a ridge and was just like, I'm out. That came right.
Well, what you wish for, brother?
Just started screaming, oh yeah! You can believe it, we blew up a 421.
That's a crime.
We figure everybody gets a mulligan on that.
Hi, my name is Mike Haneen, and I am the co-host of the all-new Audiophile Gamer podcast, presented by VZR, dedicated to winning sound. Sound is one of the most important aspects of modern video games, and our podcast is dedicated to both the art of game audio creation and the tech that drives it. Together with legendary music producer and engineer, Sir Mix-a-Lot, we're going to go behind the scenes with the real folks creating the amazing sound we experience in video games. So if you have a passion for both games and audio, this channel is for you. So click the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on future podcasts. Thank you. Okay, so here's a photo just to kind of give everybody an idea of what's going on here. There's, I don't know how many microphones, it looks like dozens, surrounding the shooters there in the background with the guns. So, I mean, that's pretty amazing. And you're saying that there were even a half mile away people with microphones recording to get that distance. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, the distance actually really became critical. And initially, when we were doing a lot of these recordings, it might be a couple of years before the title releases. So we have to do things in anticipation of what might happen in the game. And so it's kind of thinking ahead, and we're sort of going by, what might happen, what we've discussed and things like that. So it's a lot of interpolation and over coverage sometimes in order to have the maximum flexibility later on.
Right.
A lot of file naming too.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of expense and everything that's being used when we fire the weapon, and so and every weapon is different, and every space is different. So we like to, like Stuart said, kind of almost over coverage, while we're out there, because it's very difficult to monitor out there too, because you hear, even though you have headphones on that, may block some sound, you're still getting the feeling of the gun firing in front of you. So when you're listening on your headphones, it's very difficult to actually tell what you're hearing. And you often have to go, pause and hit playback and listen on headphones. But again, it's not an ideal listening situation. So over coverage kind of helps in that situation of making sure that you have the material that you're spending money on.
Yeah, quite literally the shotgun approach, right?
Yeah, sometimes you won't know what you really have. There's been so many times, especially when I'm out doing experiments and such, where you think something's not going to work. It's that one mic angle where the stand fell over, or something kind of went wrong in your approach, and you're like, that's the one that's going to suck. and you get back, and that's the one that has the gold on it. And so it's one of those things where you got to always stay open-minded. And if you fall into that trap of thinking you know everything and thinking you know exactly what's going to work, then you set yourself up for failure. It's having a bunch of people out there who really care about it and who know what they're doing, but also experimenting and also just being open-minded to it and allowing the inevitable mistakes that are going to happen, because it's one of those things where you're going to be not using the vast majority of those channels, but every now and again you'll come across the magic that just happens to be in that one mic at that one time in that one spot, stuff like that.
It sounds similar to something we do in music. Like if you're capturing a drummer, you capture everything. I mean, if you can catch a cockroach walking on the floor, you try to track everything just in case that perfection happens.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's what you guys do the same thing, but on steroids.
It's like the Yoko Ono approach to gun recording, you know. Just get it all, you know, if you can. But
well, it's very much like recording drums. It's a high SPL percussion. So capturing all those different frequencies, whether it be the lows, the mids, and different highs, as far as getting the transients, it's all super important for us.
Yeah, as I was going to say, I'm assuming you're trying not to use limiting or compression, because obviously that does away with the dynamic. So you have to make sure you're under digital zero all the time. That's
not necessarily.
That's a lot of settings.
No, it's actually it's not quite like that. Where this is a weapon that sometimes will be 160, 165 dB at the muzzle. It's so incredibly loud that there's no way to kind of contain it. Like if you recorded it a close-up gun in an open space, kind of like in this picture, and you made sure that you didn't go over, you'd probably have a very low gain setting on your recorder, if not with pads, in order to do that. And then if you play that back in your room, it'll literally sound like somebody flicking the microphone capsule with their fingernail. It's the tiniest thing. It's absolutely minuscule sounding and unusable. So it becomes a question of like, what techniques and technology can you use to either really truly capture that dynamic range? And there's new stuff that's much more capable now, but then the traditional way is like people like John Fassel and Charles Maines, real true masters of recording weapons. These guys are amazing. They've been doing it for a long time. And, we have worked with them, but I really consider myself lucky to have been around these guys to kind of learn. But it's a question of what distortion can you live with? What way of squeezing that 10 gallons of juice into an 8-ounce cup can you live with? And there's techniques that work better and techniques that work less well. And as the technology has changed, those techniques have changed. And what I needed out of the stuff became different than what a lot of the traditional approaches were. So we had to kind of invent new ways of doing a lot of it in order to accomplish the game.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're forced. So it sounds like you're forced to maybe accept baked-in results, just because of the nature of the recordings and the fact that you're recording something so loud, and that it's you have to sort of live with using maybe compression and limiting, which kind of bakes in the dynamics into the recording in order to just get something usable. I mean, does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and a lot of it will be not even using. I mean, we'll use limiters. It becomes a question of which distortion flavor works for that particular moment, and whether it's a fast limiter that's on board a mixer or a recorder, or if it's literally just hammering that A to D and just squaring out that first 5 milliseconds, and it's just complete chaos, in terms of what the recorder's getting. And that's the sound, because people are going from years of cinema where they're doing the same thing. They're hammering the inputs on whatever they got. And that is the cinematic, nostalgic, established sound of gunshots and movies and games and things like that. So there's this part of choosing between realism of capture, kind of the clinical approach to recording where you're capturing the entire dynamic range, and ideally like you would in music. And then kind of the reality of YouTube and movies and whatnot, where that distortion is a part of what you consider to be the gunshot you recognize and know and love. And it's kind of like, how do you pick and choose your moments, or your approaches?
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting that you brought up YouTube, because I was going to ask you, which this sounds like it's not that applicable, but I was going to ask you about the LUFS kind of standards that YouTube has right now. Where they're, I think they're at -14, right? So that's loud units full scale. That's what I know you guys know that. But I was going to ask you that next, but it looks like you just put the distortion there, and if it's there, if they want to drop it down to neg 14, it's still there. So the harmonic is still present. Sounds like what you're saying.
Well, these guys are going to be able to, like Tim and Dave and Steven. And I mean, everybody has to have a role in sort of what our end loudness and mix levels and all that stuff are. It's way bigger than just the gun recording stuff. The gun recording thing is just a tiny piece of what all these guys have to deal with as a collective whole. I'm sure Dave's got tons to say on LUFS, and both of the Daves actually could.
Yeah, whether we're recording dialogue or mixing the game, there's a lot that goes into it. Dave primarily mixes the game with the rest of our feedback, especially when it comes to the campaign. Tim mixes the game when it comes to multiplayer, which is a crazy difficult task. Especially when we went from being, hey, it's 12 players to, hey, it's 150 players, and a huge map and lots of new systems and tech that had to be created for us to even be able to do Warzone. But when recording and dealing with the guns and everything, we're trying to keep the right flavor of things. And with Call of Duty and our approach that we've generally taken, it's a fine line between what is real and what is Hollywood. There's even been stuff that we've kind of helped to do over time along with other media on trying to get away from what everybody thought was a suppressed weapon and went pew pew, which is absolutely not reality, but it is Hollywood reality. And it has gone on for decades. And starting for us in Ghosts was probably the first game that we stepped completely away from that and started going more realistic. And there's been great movies and other things that have come out like Zero Dark 30 who have really helped to teach people what a suppressed or silenced weapon actually sounds like, and that they're really not that quiet.
Yeah, that's sort of it almost like a meme, right? With the suppressed and silencer type sounds, like choo-choo, that you hear in just about every TV show or movie. And yeah, that's interesting how, it's something everybody who's sort of like been around those types of things are like, that is not what it sounds like, So, yeah. I
have a HK93, and every now and then I'll go out back and pling with it a little bit. Yeah, after 3 shots, it's like, that's what I hear for the next 15 minutes.
HK93s are fun. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I believe that first big gun is the Barrett. Is that the Barrett 50 cal? Or is that a different?
Yeah, it was.
Sniper?
Yeah.
Okay.
First one prone on the ground.
It's like a cannon. I mean, that thing is amazing.
It's a handful.
Thanks for watching and hope you enjoy.